It was a cold winter's night, and the wind was howling outside the old, creaky house. Inside, young Tommy was home alone, his parents having gone out for the evening. As he sat in front of the TV, watching a scary movie, he began to feel a sense of unease creep over him. Suddenly, a noise echoed through the house, causing Tommy to jump in his seat. Was it just the house settling? Or was there something more sinister at play? He tried to shake off his fear, telling himself it was all in his head. But as the night wore on, strange things began to happen. Objects moved on their own. Whispers could be heard in the darkness, and shadows seemed to dart out of the corner of his eye. Tommy's heart raced as he realized he was not alone in the house. Terrified, he grabbed a flashlight and ventured upstairs to investigate. Every creak of the floorboards sent chills down his spine. Every shadow seemed to be watching him. It was as if the house itself was alive, and it was not happy to have Tommy there. As he reached the top of the stairs, a sudden gust of wind slammed a door shut behind him, trapping him in the hallway. Panic set in as he frantically tried to open the door, but it wouldn't budge. He was trapped alone with whatever malevolent force was inhabiting the house. Just then, a soft whisper echoed in his ear, sending shivers down his spine. "Get out!" it hissed, the sound chilling him to his core. Tommy knew he had to escape, but the house seemed to be working against him, its very walls closing in around him. With a burst of adrenaline, he threw open the window and scrambled out onto the roof, the freezing air biting at his skin. As he made his way towards the edge, he could hear the house groaning and creaking behind him, angry at his escape. But just as he was about to jump, a cold hand gripped his ankle, pulling him back towards the darkness of the house. Tommy screamed as he fought against the unseen force, his heart pounding in his chest. With one final effort, he kicked free and plummeted to the ground below, landing with a thud in the snow-covered yard. Gasping for breath, he looked up at the house, its windows dark and empty, the presence inside now silent. Tommy knew he had narrowly escaped whatever evil lurked within the walls of that house. As he ran into the night, the sound of his own footsteps echoing in his ears, he vowed never to return to that place of terror and mystery. The horror of that night would stay with him forever, a chilling reminder of the dangers that can lie hidden in the shadows of even the most ordinary of homes. It was a dark and stormy night, and Sarah found herself home alone. Her parents had gone out to a dinner party, leaving her in charge of the house. As she settled in for the night, she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every creak and groan of the old house sent shivers down her spine. Sarah tried to distract herself by watching TV, but the sound of footsteps from the floor above made it impossible to focus. She decided to check the upstairs rooms, but as she climbed the stairs, the lights flickered and went out. Panic set in as she fumbled for her phone to use as a flashlight. As she reached the top of the stairs, a sudden draft made the door to her parents' room slam shut. Sarah's heart raced as she hesitantly opened the door, only to find nothing out of the ordinary. She told herself it was just the wind, but the feeling of unease remained. Suddenly, she heard a whisper coming from the end of the dark hallway. She froze in fear, unable to move, as the whispers grew louder and closer. With a burst of courage, she made a run for the stairs. But as she reached the bottom step, the front door slammed shut with a deafening bang. Sarah was now trapped inside, alone with whatever unseen presence was haunting her. She made her way to the kitchen, hoping to find something to defend herself with. As she searched through drawers, the sound of scratching echoed from the basement. With trembling hands, she made her way to the basement door and slowly descended the creaky stairs. The scratching grew louder and more frantic as she reached the bottom. The dim light bulb flickered as she hesitantly reached for the string to turn it on, but before she could, the light went out completely. Sarah was plunged into darkness, surrounded by the sound of scratching and heavy breathing. Terrified, she ran back upstairs, hoping to find a way to escape. As she reached the top, she heard a blood-curdling scream coming from the bathroom. She couldn't bring herself to look, but as the screams continued, she knew she had to confront whatever was tormenting her. She entered the bathroom and to her horror, she saw her own reflection in the mirror, but it wasn't her own eyes staring back at her. They were dark and hollow, and as she reached out to touch the glass, her reflection reached back, pulling her into the mirror. When her parents returned home, they found the house empty, with no sign of Sarah anywhere. But to this day, if you listen closely on a dark and stormy night, you can still hear her screams echoing through the empty house, a warning to those who dare to be home alone. Title: Alone in the Dark. It was a dark and stormy night, and little Timmy was home alone. His parents had gone out for a dinner party, leaving him in the care of his older sister Sarah. But when Sarah got a last-minute call from her friends inviting her out, Timmy found himself all by himself in the big, old house. At first, Timmy tried to keep himself occupied with video games and snacks, but as the hours passed, he started feeling a strange unease. The sound of the wind rattling the windows made him jump, and every creak of the floorboards sounded like someone was walking around in the house. Suddenly, a loud crash from the basement jolted Timmy out of his seat. He hesitated for a moment, then reluctantly made his way down the dark, twisting staircase. As he reached the bottom, he froze in terror. The basement was pitch black, and he couldn't shake the feeling that someone else was down there with him. With a racing heart, Timmy fumbled for the light switch, and when he finally found it, he was met with an empty room. But just as he was about to breathe a sigh of relief, he noticed something out of the corner of his eye, a figure standing in the shadows. He blinked and it was gone. Now completely spooked, Timmy ran back upstairs and locked himself in his room. But the feeling of being watched lingered, and every time he heard a noise, he was filled with dread. As he lay in bed, trying to calm his racing heart, he heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps outside his door. Frozen with fear, he watched as the doorknob slowly turned and the door creaked open. There, standing in the doorway, was a figure cloaked in darkness. Timmy's blood ran cold as the figure took a step towards him. In a panic, Timmy lunged for his phone and dialed 911, but as he pleaded for help, he realized that the line had been cut. Trembling, he turned to see the figure looming over him, its face shrouded in darkness. With a sudden burst of courage, Timmy reached for his bedside lamp and shone it towards the figure. But there was no one there. Just as he was about to catch his breath, a blood-curdling scream echoed through the house. Timmy's heart raced as he realized the scream had come from the basement. He knew he had to do something, so he crept down the stairs, his heart pounding in his chest. As he reached the basement, he saw a trail of blood leading towards a hidden corner. With each step, the silence grew heavier and heavier until he finally reached the source of the scream. There in the shadows lay his sister Sarah, her face frozen in terror. Before he could react, he felt a presence behind him. He turned around, and coming towards him was a figure, its eyes glowing with malice. In a split-second decision, Timmy grabbed a nearby tool and swung it at the figure, and as it recoiled, he made a run for the door. He sprinted out of the house and into the storm, not stopping until he reached the safety of a neighbor's house. When the police arrived, there was no sign of anyone in the house, and Sarah couldn't remember anything about the attack. To this day, Timmy can still feel the presence of the figure lurking in the shadows, and the memory of that night still haunts him. He never stays home alone anymore, and the sound of footsteps in the dark will forever send shivers down his spine.